This week, my reading choices were not that great, and I'm actually pretty sad that there were a few books that I didn't quite like as much as I thought I would. So I hope you're ready to hear about all the books I read this week. And I don't think I had anything over a 3-star. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. So today we are going to be going over all the books that I read this week and the books that I am currently reading going into next week. So make sure that you like and subscribe. Check my description box below for all of my links where you can follow me on Instagram and Goodreads. You can also go to my Pango Books account, my Patreon. Everything will always be linked down below. So let's get into the video. I am happy to say, before we get started, that my annual enrollment ended a couple days ago. So we are going to be going back to videos every Tuesday and Saturday. However, and typically I always do my weekly vlogs on Tuesdays, I am not going to start up my vlogs again until at the beginning of the year. Only because, it is getting to be Christmas time, we're going to be traveling, and I just don't want to start a vlog and then for a couple weeks not be able to do a vlog, so I'm just going to start those back up in January. But don't worry, on Tuesdays, we are going to still be having videos because I have a lot of videos that I want to do. I want to do a end of the year TBR wrap up or tag. I also want to do some of my best and worst books of the year. I also want to do at the beginning of the year where I go through my shelves and I go through all the books that I still have unread and see how many books I have on my shelves to read, how many I can get through in that year. So we'll just see what happens. So the first book that I finished, I cannot remember if at the end of last video I had said that I had finished it last Saturday or if I was still continuing to read it. So I went ahead and put it on here just in case. But that is A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. So this is a reread for me. I am wanting to get to book 2 and book 3. But of course, it's been a few years since I had read this. It's been a few years since I've even watched the TV show for the first season. I wanted to get myself, reacquainted with the characters and the world and everything. And like I have said in previous videos, I feel like Matthew and Diana, it's a very weird type of relationship. I have heard people say that this is more like Twilight for adults, and I can definitely see that because Matthew has a lot of stalking tendencies. Like, he forces himself to be around Diana. Diana really doesn't have a choice if he's around, and so it's kind of awkward. And then, of course, out of nowhere, Diana and Matthew are falling in love, and I'm just not understanding where that romance came from. Also, Diana, as a female main character who is supposed to be in her early 30s, really comes across as somebody who is like a teenager. She doesn't have a lot of deep thoughts. She doesn't think things through. The way that she talks, the way that she acts, seems like what a teenager or an early 20-year-old would act. And so I'm always like, I don't feel like Diana is as old as she is supposed to be. Therefore, the dynamic between Matthew and Diana is very odd to me. So I enjoyed my time. I'm happy that I read this so I can go into book 2 and then finish the trilogy. But I know this is a loved book by a lot of people. The problem that I have, though, is, like I said, I don't know if it's the writing. I don't know if that's how the characters are meant to be. I don't know kind of what Deborah Harkness was trying to portray with Diana, but it just feels off. I do like the whole academic, world. I like how we get to know what other characters are, and that even, like the other supernatural beings, that they're not always evil. They're not always out to kill other supernatural beings. So I do like that whole, coexisting in this society type of thing that she has going on. But of course, I remember what the big thing was at the end of the book and how book 2 is going to start. And of course, once I got to like the last, I don't know, 20% of the book, I really started getting back into it. So I'm happy that I did reread this. However, I rated it a 3-star. I think I previously had it as a 4-star. But going back and rereading it, I don't feel like either it hit the way that it was supposed to, or maybe after already knowing some of this book and already having read it, it didn't shock me, it didn't surprise me, or maybe because I have read a lot of other books that are very similar to this, maybe I'm just like, it's not the best. And then the next book that I ended up picking up was one of the books that was my most anticipated reads this year. I was really excited going into it, and that is Do Your Worst by Rosie Danan. Now, I have never read from this author before, and I was very excited because the premise of it, you have an archaeologist who is trying to make a name for himself again after being betrayed, and then you also have a curse breaker who is just trying to make ends meet and carry on, what her family has done for years. I really like her attitude and her spunk and how she doesn't let people weigh her down. And I really liked, Clark. He was the archaeologist who's trying to make a name for himself again. I did like his character as well. The thing that I didn't like is you have our girl, and she is in Scotland. She is trying to break this curse on Arden Castle, and she's been brought in by the people that are wanting to redo the castle, make it a touristy place where people can come and stay, and basically a tourist attraction. But ever since like the 1700s, I believe, this curse has driven people away. No one's been able to hold on to the castle, different things like that. And here she comes trying to do that. She arrives in Scotland. She is at one of the local pubs. In walks Clark, and she is just instantly drawn to him for like a one-night stand type of thing. Him and her kind of hit it off. There is, some romantic tension there. And then the next morning, she arrives at the castle, and there's Clark telling the people that she's a fake, she's a fraud, all of these things, and she gets mad. So now we have this whole like, we hate each other type of thing. So it's supposed to be an enemies to lovers situation. I did not feel that. I feel like the author was forcing it. I feel like the characters themselves, you can tell, like, whenever you're in their point of view, they constantly are talking in their inner monologues, talking about how they are attracted to the next person. They are, wanting to be in bed with them. They find them attractive, all of these things. And then whenever the whole hate part is supposed to come in, the whole enemies part, it is not believable. It is not believable at all. And I don't really like that, because I feel that was very jarring to me as a reader. I'm like, they're supposed to hate each other, but I don't feel that way. I don't see it. I don't feel it. I don't feel the chemistry between them. I feel like it's a forced romance. So this was a 2-star for me. I think that if you are wanting just like a romantic, somewhat comedy that is not quite enemies to lovers, and you just want a quick read, sure, pick it up. But if you are looking for your next book that you're going to love, your next 5-star, I really don't think this is going to be the book that's going to give that to you. So just know going in that it is not perfect at all. I felt that it was very jarring at times. I feel like the characters were forced to be a certain way because that's how the author wanted them written, not like how they truly are as characters if the author would have just stayed true to them and wrote them how they were wanting to be. So another 2-star, a disappointing read. I was so excited for this one. I don't know if I'm going to pick up another Rosie Danan book based on her writing style and the way that she wrote this book. So the next book that I did end up picking up was Deadlands by Stacey Marie Brown. This is book 3 in the Savage Lands series, and it is the 3rd book in the Alpha Ho Book Club pick. So this was the book for December. I couldn't wait to dive back into it. I needed to know everything that was going on. I needed to know what was going to happen with Warwick, what was going to happen with our girl, because there were some revelations that happened at the end of book 2. Now, like I have previously said, this series is not the most well-written series. You need to overlook a lot of critiques in here. The way that it's written, the way that things are kind of like overdone, they're over dramatized or overwritten. Basically, I feel like the romance, it's supposed to be a slow burn, but I feel like it's too much of a slow burn. I feel like the way that the world is created is very vibrant, and I absolutely love that. But whenever the characters in themselves are in there, there's a lot of them that are very one-dimensional, some of them you don't even really care about. Also, I feel like the romance is taking way too slow, where it's almost taken me out of the fact that I'm even wanting the romance to be in there. Also, I feel like how many times can our girl be arrested and out of the situation and nothing ever happens? There's no like tension. There's not anything going against them. It's all just very easy and laid out. There's a lot of things that needed to be fleshed out, or, you know, more information needed, right? But these books, it's so hard to not read them. And that is purely for the vibes. That is purely for the entertainment and the story, because the story in itself, not how it's written, but the story in itself is very addictive, where you are like, I want to know more. I want to know what's going on. What is she doing? What is he doing? All of these things. Now, I will say, I can't wait to get to the 4th book, because the way this book ended was even worse than the way that book 2 ended. There has been a revelation that's happened, and I need to know more about it. I need to know what's going to happen. And I don't know. I just love this series. It is, if you are going to come at it at a critical level, the writing, world building, just a lot of aspects, this would probably be a lot of 1 and 2 stars for people. But if you are purely going in for the vibes and the story and how addicting this story is, then of course it's like a 3 or 4 star. I gave this 3 stars only because I feel like there was too much convenience going on. I feel like there was not enough romance development that should be by book 3. So I gave it a 3 star. But I'm not going to lie, guys, I cannot wait to get to the next book. So in January, I will be reading the 4th book. But like I said, if you haven't read this, this is like a dystopian YA new adult fantasy romance. And I say YA because there's a lot of the characters and a lot of the world that feels very YA. But then you get a lot of new adult things like the spice and different things like that. So it's kind of on that cusp. But it is really, really good. And then the next book that I picked up was God Killer by Hannah Kaner. I am so sad to say that I DNF'd this book. I was probably 40% of the way through it, and I just could not continue. The writing style in this book is a lot different than what I'm used to. I don't actually like the writing style. I'm not even really invested in the story or any of the characters. Basically, you are following our female main character whose family had a disturbing beginning to this book. I can't say what it is, but it has provoked her to want to kill the gods, and so she goes around killing all of these gods in this world, and she's known as the God Killer. She meets some people along the way, and she's kind of like on your normal, typical fantasy quest, and I couldn't stay in it. I just felt like the writing was dry. I felt like the world building was non-essentially there. This is an epic fantasy. And I have realized out of many books that I have read this year that I don't know if I am a straight epic fantasy girly. I feel like I am more on the political epic fantasies. I am more on the, dense, high fantasy type things. But this, I'm not really into it, which is okay. Everybody can't be into everything, but I love this edition. This is the Illumicrate edition. And sadly, with me DNFing this, I don't really feel like I need to keep it. So I am going to be getting rid of it. I don't know. I wanted to love it, you guys. I know that the second book, Sunbringer, I think, was just went on sale this past week from Illumicrate, and I think it sold out. And I was going to get Sunbringer, but whenever I noticed that I was just not enjoying this story, I didn't even try. And so I'm going to be getting rid of this beautiful edition. I could just turn it around and just use it for the edges in itself, but I can't hold on to it. I need space for books that I love, books that I want to read. So I'm going to be getting rid of it. It's so sad. So those were all of the books that I have either read this week or DNF'd. And like I said, sad to say, I didn't really have an astounding reading week. I mean, I had a 2-star, 2 3-stars, and a DNF. And while I had a good time with the majority of the books that I read, I just feel like I didn't have an amazing time like I did the week before, where I had read like Check and Mate, and I had just the time of my life with some of those books that I read. And I just feel like it started putting me into a reading slump. So I was worried about books that I was going to pick up afterwards if that was going to negatively impact me. But I am happy to say it did not. I think things are starting to kick back up on my enjoyment of the books I'm reading. So the first book that I am currently reading is Blackbird of the Gallows by Meg Castle. You guys, I don't know how nobody talks about this book. Granted, I think it came out in 2017. I don't even know what year. Let me just see. Yeah. So September 2017. And I am shocked. I have never heard of this book. If you watched my book haul, whenever I ended up getting this from the bargain section at Books A Million, I was just purely on just the cover vibes. I mean, it's a gorgeous cover, beautiful, and that's the reason why I got it for $5. This book, though, I did not expect what is happening. So you are following Angie. She is a teenage girl. I don't really know if she is a junior or a senior in high school. Anyway, we are following her. Now, tragic things have happened in her past, and I don't want to say what they are because I don't want to give away some of what makes the story. But she lives next door to this house where there was like a tragic event that happened as well. And a new family moves in. And she notices that there's like a lot of black crows around as well. She's like, this is very abnormal. But our guy, his name is Reese. He is the new neighbor with the family, and he is going to school with her. And of course, he is gorgeous, ripped body, all of these things, right? And she's like the girl that kind of like slinks in the shadows and isn't part of the popular crowd and thinks that she's ugly and all of these things, okay? And basically, you're following Angie where weird things are happening. She's seeing things that she probably shouldn't see. She's not understanding why her mind is kind of playing tricks on her a lot, doing these delusional things. And Reese has something to do with it. So I am probably 70% of the way through this book currently, and I'm devouring it. I love it. Gothic vibes, a typical YA romance, sprinkle paranormal in there, and a mystery of what is happening in this town. And that's what you have in this book. It is so good. And then I found out that this was published by Entangled Publishing, which I am an insider for. And I went on to our Facebook group and I took a picture and I said, why did I not ever know this book was ever available? And I was like, it is so good, need recommendations. And I found out that it is actually a duology and there is a second book. So I'm very happy with that because I don't think that I am ready with the next 30% to say goodbye to these characters and this world and the vibe that it creates. So I'm very excited to continue on with the story because you all know whenever you get to the last 20-30% of a book, especially whenever it is a duology, trilogy, or a series, it usually gets really good because you want to read the second book. And I am loving it. I love Reese and I love Angie and I love the whole dynamic in this book. I'm just loving everything about it. It's your typical YA paranormal romance, just your typical one. All the tropes are the same, everything's there, but this story is very unique, especially the way that the paranormal aspect of it, like the supernatural beings that are in here, are not your typical vampires and werewolves, right? Like these are a whole different supernatural being in itself, and I am loving this story. So I can't rate this book yet, but I feel like it's going to be a very high 4-star for me. But definitely stick around next week to hear my final thoughts on that. But like I said, you guys, I don't really hear a lot of people talking about this book. And granted, if you're not into YA romance or YA paranormal romance, you're not going to like this book. But if you are needing a palate cleanser, if you need to get away from all of those adult fantasy smutty books, definitely pick this book up. It has romance. It does have, a little bit of the YA spice that you can typically get, but it is so good, you guys. I just cannot be happy enough. So I am happy after the week that I had of the books that I read and the one that I DNF'd, that I am finally on the uphill with this. And of course, the other book that I'm reading as well is amazing also. And then finally, the last book that I am currently reading, I am diving my toes into the 6th book in the Blood Gray series, which is Blood Union Part 2. I am only about 10% of the way into the book, so I don't have a whole lot of thoughts. We're just kind of starting to get going again on how we left our characters and what kind of situation they're in. But I am loving it. I am loving some new characters that have been introduced. I am loving some new storylines that are also introduced. And I am really happy with the way that Vila Roth has written this series because it started out as one thing. Okay, one storyline, the King of Tenebra is awful. We need to make sure that the Hesperenes and the Tenebrans have this oath. And 6 books in, we're in an entirely different plot line. Things have just completely done a 180. There are a whole lot of other characters involved. There is a lot more of the mystery going on, and I just love it. You guys hear me talk about this series so much, so I'm not going to rattle on a lot, but just know that I'm 10% of the way through, smiling every minute that I am reading it on my Kindle, and I can't wait to get to the next book because I think I know what is going to happen in the next book. I know I'm only 10% of the way through this, but I have kind of understood the way that Vila Roth has been writing these books, and I've kind of understood how much progression to expect in this book. So based on the past books, I feel like we're going to get to a point, and then I think the next book is finally going to be something that has been hinted at for a few books now, and I'm pretty excited for it. So just know, having a good time with it. All right, you guys, those are all the books that I read and the books that I am currently reading. Let me know your thoughts below. Have you read any of these books? Do you agree with me or not agree on some of my ratings or my feelings on them, always leave me a comment below. I love to talk to you guys about the books I've read or the books you're currently reading. I'm also always open to suggestions of any other books that should be on my radar. But definitely check out my video that's coming out Tuesday. I think you're going to end up loving it. It's going to be the end of the year TBR tag, I think, that's going around. I wanted to do it. I have watched a couple of my favorite booktubers do it by now, and I have compiled a list of the questions that I want to answer in this, and I can't wait. It's so exciting. I'm going to be prepping that tomorrow to film. But definitely check it out. And again, like I said, in January, my weekly vlogs are going to come back. I am also going to be starting back up my Patreon again. We are going to be going full force with some Patreon exclusive sprints. You get to pick a book that I read each month if you are in my top tier. I am also going to be adding in some goodies as we go throughout the year and adding on to the top tier. So if you want to get ahead of the game, definitely head on over and become a Patreon member, because we are going to be starting the book club up again. I'm going to be posting some suggestions on what I'm thinking that we're going to start the new year off with. And then also in January, my book club that I have created here locally with a few of the girlies that I know. We are currently reading a book, and you will hear my thoughts on that towards the end of the month, but I am going to keep them very brief because I know that a couple of them may watch my videos, and I don't want them to know my thoughts before we're going to meet in January, which I'm so excited for, because we're going to be meeting at a Mexican restaurant. We're going to be having tacos and talking about the books that we read, and each month we're going to be picking another book, and it's just a great way to get with the girls, talk books, have a good time, and I'm very excited for that as well. But until next week, I hope you guys have a great week, and I hope that you are getting ready for Christmas, whether you be traveling or whether you have family coming in. Just always make sure that you're safe and just having a great time. I will see you all next time. Bye!